In today's world, it's almost impossible to imagine how much money truly exists at the highest levels, because if an average salaried person ever tried to reach Elon Musk's net worth, they would have to work non-stop for nearly 8 million years, which is almost 30 times longer than humans have even existed. And while you heard this single line, Elon probably made another $100,000. Yet what shocks people most is that Elon isn't even close to being the richest person in human history, because when you look back through time, you find figures who make even Elon look like an ordinary man. So let's begin our journey and travel through time, starting in the late 1980s with Pablo Escobar, the Colombian drug lord who controlled an empire so massive that he made $420 million every single week, storing so much cash that rats literally ate $2 billion of it every year. And even though his inflation-adjusted wealth reached nearly 80 billion, he still doesn't surpass Elon. But when we talk about cash in hand, Escobar was probably the king. Now shift forward to 1945, World War II has just ended, American soldiers are returning to a booming, hopeful economy. But in the ruins of the Soviet Union stands Joseph Stalin, a man who personally owned nothing luxurious, living in simple clothes and ignoring his own salary. Yet he controlled the entire Soviet state, an economy worth $10 trillion today. So even though he was poor on paper, he may have been one of the most powerful and wealth-rich humans ever because his authority was the money. Now we go to 1909, where a young Adolf Hitler is homeless in Vienna, rejected from art school, selling postcards for survival, until prison gives him time to write Mein Kampf, a book that would later sell millions once he rose to power, and through tax exemptions, royalties, donations worth billions, and the resources taken by his expanding military, Hitler eventually controlled nearly $3 trillion worth of wealth during the peak of World War II, yet even he wasn't the richest ever. Now leave dictators behind and move to the early 1900s, where Henry Ford discovers the power of paying workers well, doubling wages, cutting workdays, creating assembly lines, and reducing car production from 12 hours to just 90 minutes, making the Model T the most popular car in the world for 50 straight years. And by doing so, Ford didn't just create a company, he accidentally invented the modern middle class, commuting culture, and suburban life, contributing influence worth far beyond his personal $200 billion fortune. But before Ford, we had the robber barons of the late 1800s, Cornelius Vanderbilt dominating railroads, Andrew Carnegie controlling steel, and John D. Rockefeller crushing the oil industry through Standard Oil, eventually owning 90% of all U.S. oil refining until the Supreme Court broke his company into 34 pieces, which ironically made him even richer, turning him into the world's first billionaire and giving him a modern-day value between $400 and $600 billion, making Rockefeller possibly the richest American of all time. But even Rockefeller gets overshadowed when we go further back to the 1700s and meet the Rothschild family, who built the world's first international banking network without phones, funding wars, governments, kings, and massive global projects, growing so influential that some historians believe their combined family wealth could have reached levels no modern billionaire could match, though their individual wealth today is small compared to the past. But now jump to the 1500s and meet Jacob Fugger, the German banker who financed emperors, wars, artworks, and even influenced the Reformation, holding 2% of Europe's GDP, worth well over $400 billion today, and even controlling kings by reminding them that without him they could never have taken the throne. But our journey doesn't end there, because in 1324, Mansa Musa, king of the Mali Empire, takes his legendary pilgrimage across Africa, carrying so much gold that he hands it out freely, destabilizing entire economies, and many believe he controlled nearly half of the world's gold supply, giving him wealth estimates around 400 billion or far more, depending on the source. But even Musa is rivaled when we go to the early 1200s, where Genghis Khan builds the largest contiguous empire in history, controlling nearly 20% of Earth's land, worth $130 trillion today, yet personally living like a simple warrior, owning almost nothing, and redistributing wealth to his men, making him rich in power but not material possessions. However, to find the final contender, we travel back 2,000 years to the Roman Empire, where Augustus Caesar controls 20% of Rome's economic output, owns Egypt personally, collects vast taxes, and even confiscates the property of wealthy Romans he dislikes, giving him a modern-day net worth estimated around $5 trillion, making him possibly the richest ruler ever. And even earlier, around 900 BC, we hear stories of King Solomon, who collected tons of gold each year and lived in unbelievable luxury, but the lack of reliable historical records makes his exact wealth uncertain. So after traveling across thousands of years, countless civilizations, kings, warriors, emperors, dictators, and businessmen, who is the richest person in human history? When we compare GDP shares, Rockefeller beats Elon with 2% of America's economy at the time. But Elon's wealth exists in the largest economy the world has ever seen, verifiable, measurable, and usable, not tied to dictatorship, politics, land control, or myth, making Elon Musk the richest documented person the world has ever known, with over $400 billion in personal net worth today. And while someone in the future may surpass him, history teaches us that as the world grows, humanity grows richer together.